In this video, I'll be giving my top 6 NBA centers of the 1960s decade, based on their combination of abilities, accomplishments, and number of seasons they played the center position throughout that decade. Before I begin, I'd also briefly like to point out an error I've seen many fans make about what they think NBA basketball was like in the 1960s, and as a result of sharing this error, they turn others off to the history of the game. It is primarily their inability to recognize who they are seeing on film, when it happened, and why the game was once played that way. On social media, I've actually seen widespread use of these clips of student athletes from the 1940s and other pre-shot clock era clips like them used to discredit Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell's success in the NBA many years later. The stigma isn't helped when famous NBA journalists such as Bill Simmons have also written comments in response to seeing clips of Wilt Chamberlain score 73 points such as this, quote, "Every big Nick looked like a prehistoric version of Brian Scalabrine," unquote. He also goes on to mention if you put Dwight Howard in Wilt's shoes, he'd do the same thing. I'm sure Paul Hogue would be flattered with the physical comparison to Brian Scalabrine. This is actual footage from that aforementioned 73-point game. And I'm sure Dwight Howard is equally flattered to know he's been gifted 4 inches of height and the ability to hit fall-away jump shots.
It's not even in my top 10. Let me tell you something, Brian Scalabrine would have done what Bill Russell did in his heyday. Colin, you could have played professional basketball right now in that era. Oh, God.
This cognitive dissonance is so widespread, many fans actually seem to have a hard time differentiating black and white footage from the 1940s with clips of recognizable players like Kareem at UCLA.
But I mean, was the net still 10 feet? I'm surprised I didn't see peach baskets out here though. Oh, rebound. Oh, he dunked it! He dunked it! Was that the first dunk ever?
In my opinion, it's important to learn exactly who we are looking at, when we are looking at them, and at what stage of competition. So without further delay, here is my top 6 best NBA centers of the 1960s decade. Number 6. Willis Reed. Willis Reed measured half an inch taller than Cleveland Cavaliers starting center Tristan Thompson, and typically played at a weight of 240 to 250 pounds despite playing in an era that predates lifting weights. He could throw this powerful frame around with alarming ferocity, quickness, balance, and speed, and finished strong over players much taller than himself. Willis could shoot too, and had great timing with his fakes and a variety of finesse finishes for scoring around the much larger 7-footers of his era.
One of the most physical, aggressive players that I ever played against. Willis was tough, played hard, 6'10", and played every inch of it. Very, very tough player, good team player. Tough both offensively and defensively. The thing that Willis loved to do is when you get him on the free throw line beside him, you'd go for the rebound or whatever after a free throw, and he'd take his elbow and he'd shove it right into your neck and drive you to the floor. And the referees would let him get away. But one time they didn't. It was at the end of a game when I was with Philadelphia, and I was beside Willis on the line, and the referee was off to my left. It was Mendy Rudolph. And I said, "Mendy," I said, "watch him. He's going to hook me and knock me to the floor."
Willis Reed. Havlicek, Willis Reed, guarded by Baylor. Pretty dramatic here in the next minute. Ball, Frazier saves it, under to his teammate Reed. Hayes defensively.
And it was Willis now throwing off bodies off his shoulders, and he just kind of went along the whole team and just decimated his team. Rudy Russo had a broken jaw, and Henry Finkel had a broken jaw.
I know a couple of guys got punched, and it wasn't even involved in the fight.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Number 5. Elmo Beatty. Elmo Beatty measured half an inch taller than Cleveland Cavaliers starting center Tristan Thompson, and worked hard to maintain a lean playing weight of 235 pounds. Beatty was fluid in the post when the matchups allowed for it, but he often had to make up for his lack of height by taking advantage of his solid mid-range shooting touch. Beatty was also one of the fastest centers in the NBA and often raced out for easy baskets in transition.
He certainly was at a disadvantage when you played against Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, Thurmond from San Francisco, and Walt Bellamy, the 7-footers at that time that played inside. And when we played teams like that, he was more a high post center. He basically was a 15-foot jump shooter. It was to our advantage that he was that type of player so that he could take them out from under the basket.
Defensively, he had a reputation as an enforcer and often led the league in fouls and ejections, which only bolstered this reputation.
On the middle feeds to Brisker, blocked by Elmo Beatty cleanly as he picked the ball right off in midair off his hand.
Number 4, Nate Thurmond. Nate Thurmond measured the same height as Nerlens Noel, and although I was unable to find actual figures for Nate Thurmond's reach, it was claimed to be even greater than Wilt Chamberlain's 7-foot 8-inch reach. If this is true, this would mean Thurmond was potentially even longer than Rudy Gobert, the longest center in 2017. Thurmond was a defensive monster. Both Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain claim he did as good a job as anyone at disrupting their game. His all-around ability during his prime was considered by coaches around the league to be a blend of what both Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell brought to the floor.
Nate Thurmond is a center that is starting to rival both Chamberlain and Russell as far as his ability offensively and defensively. And we have found that you don't win big in the NBA unless you have that really great center.
Auerbach uses Chamberlain and Russell together. Thurmond still beats them.
Number 3, Walt Bellamy.
That's Bellamy fighting his way in there for the score.
Walt Bellamy measured both the same height and approximate weight as DeAndre Jordan and had an incredible offensive repertoire, particularly his ability to drive despite carrying as much as 270 pounds. Bellamy ran the floor well and could also shoot jumpers in isolation, spot up, post up, or pick and roll situations, in addition to a strong finishing ability at the rim. Take note of the size and physical ability of Walt Bellamy, as this is the kind of player Wilt Chamberlain was capable of scoring 73 points against. Walt Bellamy was an all-state football receiver in high school before becoming a great basketball player.
Well, I don't know if he's underrated in the NBA people's eyes. He certainly has been one of the great centers for the last few years, and sure, when you compare him to Russell or Chamberlain or Thurmond possibly, he might be behind them, but offensively, he's certainly ahead of them, as far as our game is concerned.
Ball handler, all alone, Bellamy. Great pass by Hudson.
Bridges, inside for Bellamy.
Bellamy scores. They're dominating the board.
And finally, both number 1 and 2 has to be a tie between Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain.
Feel like Wilt overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
It would be hard to find, you talk about players and the era I played, it would be hard to find two better centers than Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
I mean, they were incredible players.
Russell is obviously the winningest player here, though he is more dominant than most people credit him as being. Bill Russell is also about the same height as DeAndre Jordan. Russell is also known to have had a 7'4" arm span. I've heard many people assume he was the size of a small forward based on his misleading roster listing of 6'9", but he actually was closer to 6'10" barefoot, which would easily put him at the 6'11" mark in today's NBA. As with most of these guys, his 215-pound listed weight is also selling him short. At his heaviest, without lifting weights, Russell weighed as much as 240 pounds, the same weight that a young Dwight Howard tipped the scales in the 2004 NBA draft.
West all alone. Look at Russell come down. And what a play by Russell.
Pass to Ellis, back to West. He's bottled up out to Baylor, driving the lane. He lays it up, is blocked by Russell. Blocked by Russell. What a play by Bill Russell.
To me, Bill Russell is the most dominating individual that's ever played the game of basketball. He does everything that's necessary for a fine basketball player.
It's just tremendous. One of the greatest defensive players that's ever played the game. The greatest champion of all time in basketball. I mean, look at what he got, 10 or 11 rings. I mean, he got more rings than he's got fingers. He was one of the most intense players, a tremendous intimidator. Many times, he'd have you so intimidated that he would stamp his foot, which sounded like he had left the floor. He never left the floor, and you'd make a fool out of yourself, letting the ball go, expecting to get the ball blocked, so you shot a little bit harder than normal, and he never left the ground, and it ricocheted off the glass harmlessly. So he had that kind of impact on players.
Russell just about invented what you could call defensive attack. He has all the tools: quick hand, fine balance, great spring and timing, and a keen mind, which he's disciplined to anticipate his opponent's moves.
We felt like as long as we had that great one, Bill Russell, we were going to continue to win, and we did.
He hooks, he jumps, he shoots, he defends, he rebounds, and gets the ball out. And beyond all that, he's a tremendous team ball player.
Bill Russell is the most dominating defensive player in NBA history, but don't mistake that for a weakness on the offensive end. He wasn't a volume scorer, but he knew how to run plays and pass and had a good variety of ambidextrous moves and finishes around the basket, along with a quick first step and great timing that you had to respect.
385, Boston now leading by 8 lead. 42 seconds left to go in this ball game. This crowd is starting to go berserk. Havlicek comes to the right. On the left, it goes over to Russell. There are 35 seconds left. Russ fakes. Russ is driving to the hoop, and he stops it. 95-85. 30 seconds left, and the Celtics are on the verge of their 9th World Championship.
The middle. 94-80. And Russell shoved it through.
You know, people keep telling me, oh, yeah, who's the greatest center? And they keep throwing out these names, and they're saying Russell. No, you know, Bill Russell is the greatest center in the history of the game for helping a team achieve championships. But from the standpoint of picking a player with the skills required to play the center position on both ends of the court, there isn't anyone that comes close to what Wilt Chamberlain accomplished. Great, amazing athlete. I don't know if people realize I think he ran a 48-second 440. He high jumped well over 7 feet. The guy was incredible.
In those days, they didn't keep blocked shots. I kept them through all the games that Wilt played. Russell blocked shots, but not as many as Wilt.
It was unbelievable. The guy was amazing. He was absolutely, truly amazing.
Wilt would not only block your shot, Wilt could go up in the air and catch your shot.
Wilt could do whatever he wanted to on the basketball court. Strong, palmed a bowling ball, a 16-pound bowling ball. Then put his fingers in the sockets and the holes, palmed it like that, and held it out.
Wilt Chamberlain is measured to be the exact same height and within a fraction of an inch of the arm span of Rudy Gobert, the absolute longest player and third tallest in the 2017 NBA season. Wilt outweighed Gobert by a whopping 50 pounds or more in muscle and tipped the scales at 290 to 310 pounds for the majority of his career, weighing as much as 320 pounds by only his 5th NBA season, which would outweigh any player in the 2017 NBA season. As far as all-time greats go, only Shaq has ever been heavier. Combine this with Wilt's world-class track and field athleticism in not only leaping and running events, a trait he shared with Bill Russell, but additionally field events that required strength such as throwing the shot, which he held a state record for in Pennsylvania before his 17th birthday. There are no shortage of incredible accomplishments and stories that testify that Wilt Chamberlain is probably the strongest player to ever step on an NBA court. So it should be easy to understand why he dominated against centers that are in fact every bit the size of modern NBA centers. Wilt could run as fast as anyone, and though he sometimes broke out in transition, he preferred to post up in half-court sets to take advantage of his immense size and strength in the post with fall-away jump shots, finger rolls, and dunks. He was so strong the league learned wrestling him for position after he received the ball was already too late and would quickly put you at risk of fouling out, such as with Darrell Imhoff and Wilt's NBA record 100-point game.
Well, for me, what comes to mind is just how physically dominating Wilt was. I mean, his size and strength and athletic ability, he had a great variety of really incredible strong points to his athletic skills. If people don't realize that, you know, when he went to the University of Kansas, he competed in the shot put and the high jump and the quarter mile, in addition to playing on the basketball team. You know, he was really a superlative athlete.
And he was the greatest athlete, I think, that's ever lived. The strongest man that's ever played this game.
Strongest basketball player that ever lived.
They always said he was by far the strongest person who's ever played in the NBA.
Absolutely. I mean, he lifted me up like with one arm like nothing. He was so powerful. He came to the gym and he would do a tricep extension that the big guys, the strongest guys, would do, let's say, 120 pounds. He would come and he would do 150, 170 pounds. That's how strong he was.
You know, Wilt was so coordinated, and he was a powerful man. You never wanted to make him mad, but he was a wonderful physical specimen. He was tall, as you know, and powerful, and run and jump, and very agile. He was an incredible player.
Back to Rutledge, into Chamberlain.
Can't compare to what they're doing now. It's just the evolution of man, the evolution of sports. There were 12 pro teams in the NBA by the time Bill Russell retired. At one point, there were 8 teams.
That's correct, as few as 8 teams. And if anyone watching this video has assumed fewer teams is a good reason not to appreciate players from that era, consider this for a moment. Those 6 Hall of Fame centers I just showed you all battled against each other on different teams during the 1965 NBA season. a season with only 9 teams. That meant nearly 70% of the league's centers ended up a Hall of Famer. The other 3 teams weren't far behind in talent, with the Royals fielding a 277 to 285 pound monster named Wayne Embry.
That was Wayne Embry. Not many people get in his way.
The Royals have some other fine ball players. For instance, we'll call him the human redwood tree. Wayne Embry there, number 15. He's agile and he's a good scorer.
A 4-time NBA All-Star who, despite being the shortest center in the league at that time, had nearly the biggest hands in NBA history that measured 12 inches across. And according to Oscar Robertson, Embry had a reach as long as Bill Russell's. The Detroit Pistons had a Tyson Chandler-sized 7-footer named Reggie Harding. And finally, the Los Angeles Lakers fielded a rotation of 3 6'10" centers in Darrell Imhoff, a future All-Star, Gene Wiley, and Leroy Ellis. Those guys, plus the 6 players I highlighted throughout this video, were getting the lion's share of minutes of any NBA center in the 1965 NBA season. At no point in NBA history has there ever been a greater density of center talent. Not the 1980s, not the 1990s, the mid-1960s through to the early 1970s had the greatest density of Hall of Famers playing center position in NBA history. That concludes my video of top 6 centers from the 1960s. Please hit like and subscribe for more content and follow me on Twitter at WiltCArchive.